really excited about today's presentation. It's a subject matter that a lot of people really don't know a huge amount about. It's a particularly important subject because it's taking an ever larger proportion of our advertising spend. So whether you're an advertiser, a brand owner, a marketing director, or an agency that are really advising clients in this space, in the digital space, it's really an important subject. These weekly calls, for those that are new to Pimento, we do these more or less every Wednesday. We also have a network of other calls across the week working with our Alliance and PRCA members, as well as our own members. But they're all here really designed to kind of give insights and help educate people into kind of the hot topics within the marketing world. We also have podcasts of the same, which you can pick up on. We will be recording it so that actually for those who would like to share it with friends in the industry or colleagues, there will be a video which will be published on the Pimento Catch-Up video channel, which YouTube. All you need to do is go on, pop into Google, wherever your search engine is, Pimento Agency YouTube, and you'll find it. Okay, so click fraud. Click fraud is, I think, possibly the biggest issue facing advertisers today. It's not really fraud in general in advertising. Fortunately, over the years, has been one of those things that we've been conscious of and aware of. If we go back to the outdoor days, outdoor posters, there were companies that had to go and do poster checks to make sure that posters got posted. Even before that, you think about buying TV airtime. You got proof of transmissions sent to you, so you knew the spot that you bought had actually got out. But we're now in a global world, and actually the concept of click fraud and the concept of actually fraud in general within digital advertising is so much larger than it once was. It's estimated that there'll be about $50 billion worth of click fraud by 2025. And in some cases, some of the work that the agency that are presenting their ideas today have done, they've been able to demonstrate to their clients, in some cases, up to 66% of their spend, in fact, is being actually fraudulently misspent or not spent at all. So I'm delighted that we're joined today by Stuart Boucher. Stuart is in the chair. He is the Chief Technology Officer and Data Lead at Beacon. Beacon are an agency that specialise in click fraud. He has been in the industry for some years. He engaged in the technology sector in 1995, even though there was a technology sector in 1995. As a project manager, he's then risen to board level. He's a member of the DMA North Council, and he's chair of the DMA in Leeds Hub, digital project lead for the UK Police Memorial, and member of the Chief Data Office Hub. So he knows his way around data. His colleague, Suzanne Trainer, is also going to be on our panel when it comes to questions later on, is head of marketing at Beacon, and she joined the company after having run a small Brighton-based digital agency for 10 years. So we're in good hands. Beacon's particular speciality is click fraud protection. They're a Pimento member, and they work across both paid search, social, blocking bots on Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads, and Microsoft Ads. So what we're going to do is we'll do a short presentation. I suspect and really hope it actually does create an opportunity for you all to ask questions. As you know, on the bottom of the screen, there's a little chat box. Obviously, there's one chat in there. If there's anything or any questions you'd like to ask Stuart and Suzanne, or just you'd like to put your hand up and say, I've been a victim of fraud, or whatever it happens to be, please do take the opportunity to engage. We really want to get today's conversation going. So, just if you could note down any questions you've got in that chat box, and I'll come to you as I moderate it. That's okay. Okay, right, we're going to start. Stuart, good morning. I'm going to sort of put you in the spotlight, if I may.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Stephen, for that outstanding introduction. I guess that it's a pleasure to see you all here. And I think that what I'll do is, unless you say otherwise, Stephen, I'll just start on with a set of slides that I'll chat over. I think, as Stephen said, if you can put any questions in chat, then we'll hopefully fill them all at the end. Let me just... I've managed to close my Zoom now. You wouldn't think I was a CTO, would you? Because I now can't screen share. Right, here we go. Screen 2. Hopefully everyone will be able to see me, Suzanne, who is my wife and HR manager for Beacon, and our Whippet in Saltburn. So this is the introduction slide. I think Stephen's done most of it. CTO data lead for Beacon. council member of the DMA North Council. The DMA are the Data and Marketing Association. I think everybody should know who they are. And they really are sort of in many ways, supposedly the industry body for marketeers. And I sit on the DMA North Council as well. Member of the Chief Data Officer Hub, which is exactly what it says on the tin. CDO is a fairly new thing, and basically it's kind of that middle ground between CEO and CIO and CTO, where it's very much about data and how you use it in data responsibility. And digital and online project manager for the UK Police Memorial, something I've been involved with for a long time, something very dear to my heart. So just a quick couple of words about Beacon. So that is the some of the Beacon team up here in Leeds, which is where the dev team are based. We do win awards, which is very nice. We have some good clients across a range of sectors. We work with agencies, we work direct, primarily through agencies. As you can see, we're members of the Northern Powerhouse, Crown Commercial Service Provider, but most recently, top right, we won the Prolific North Tech Awards for Best Martech Innovation. And this was very recently the MTechs in Manchester, which is a lovely building if you've not been. And we have the award is over there to my left, if anyone actually wants to see it in real life. So we provide click-through protection on Google Ads, Bing, Facebook, Instagram, so paid search, paid social, to allow marketers to accurately measure campaign results and get a more effective campaign spend. I'm going to start by talking about trust a little bit, because one of the things that always comes out is people say, well, hang on a second here, why is this, why is this happening? Why is it that, these key players, Google are responsible for something like 2/3 of all digital ad spend, and Facebook are responsible for the vast majority of the rest. Why are they behaving like this? Why is this happening? And I want to talk to you about another very large organization, which is called Amazon. And this here is a 1 terabyte USB drive, which myself and my network manager Martin were late one night, as digital people tend to be. And I said, I need to transfer a lot of data from somewhere to somewhere else. And you can do it by the cloud, but actually it does take a bit of time because it was locally. And so we looked online, looked on Amazon, and said, okay, let's get this 1 terabyte drive. Fantastic, brilliant, I'll buy it. Got it. I got it delivered. It's nice and shiny. It's on my key ring over there. And I took it home and I showed it to my son, who took the photo on the first page. He said, it's not a terabyte drive. There's loads of fakes around. And he's 14, so he knows everything. I think anyone who's got a child will know that. And I thought, yeah, whatever. But it stuck with me a little bit. And I thought, you know what, I really ought to go and check this out. And I did a bit of reading, and he's right. There are a lot of fraudulent ones. So I ran this thing called H2 Test W, which is just a thing you download. And what it does is it basically writes a whole heap of data through to whatever you want it to do, internal, external drive, and then checks it's still there afterwards. And on the face of it, it was still there. You could see the directory structures and the files that it had written, but actually, as you can see there in the middle, 286 gigabytes of data lost. And I didn't let it write the whole terabyte, it took forever. And so what this is the 32 USB 2, not even 3, stick masquerading as a 1 terabyte drive and being sold on Amazon as such. And I had a look at the reviews on this drive, and there are many others like it, by the way. And it's people talking about how they stored their wedding photos on there, or their children's photos, or whatever it might be, or their university work. And I was thinking, these poor buggers, because they're going to lose everything because it looks like it's there until you need it. So I put a review in, which was rejected by Amazon. It did not comply with their guidelines. This is fraud. This is not a 1 terabyte USB stick. It's 32 gig. And I put all the details in. I'm not sure what they objected to. I complained, but I never got anything back. And this thing is still for sale on there. So this is trust. And the reason it's relevant to what we're talking about here today is this slide. So some of you may be familiar with a lawsuit that's just basically going on in the US. And it's been going on for a little while. But on the 1st of November, the judge actually released the 172 page, I think it's 172 page allegations against Google and Facebook. And this is the quote on the screen here. It's from the Register, which is a sort of tech journal, I suppose. The allegations are true. The breadth and depth and sheer focused intent of Google's abuse of its position would be unique. The perversion of the ad market would be intense. And this is stuff that if you've been in this sector, you kind of known about before. So, for example, there's a number of projects that are named in here. So Project Bernanke, or Bernanke, is claimed to take data from publishers' ad servers, this is in the ad infrastructure, to boost Google's own services. Project NERA, N-E-R-A, to create a not owned but operated walled garden for users to use any Google service. So that's basically controlling the data that they see. Project Jedi, great name, was allegedly meant to freeze out independent ad exchanges by using insider knowledge. So that's Google, who are basically getting knowledge of how other ad exchanges work and then using that to manipulate pricing structures. And then Jedi Blue, which is my favorite, is where Google was alleged to have conspired with Facebook to parcel out the advertising space between themselves. So if you've got any doubt about whether you should trust these organizations, at the very least, you should be thoughtful about giving that trust. And I presume we're happy to share this deck afterwards, or certainly these the links to these articles, and you can read them yourself and make your own mind up about them. And the last one, actually, I really enjoyed. Facebook champions privacy of its own algorithms. There's an organization in Germany who do a lot of work into how social media platforms work, and they were running a very long study into how Instagram placements stories, particularly into children's timelines, and Facebook shut it down because they said that it was against the GDPR guidelines, because by doing so they were affecting the privacy of their own users, which I thought was particularly unreasonable. So ad fraud on social. There's a few pictures here of Yorkshire, in case anyone feels the urge to visit Yorkshire. Saltburn is a village in North Yorkshire. Malham Cove is a very beautiful limestone pavement and cove. So this is from Integral Ad Science, and it was an ad fraud essentials white paper. Optimize against fraud campaigns in West Europe are 10 times less likely to be exposed to fraud than those lacking protection. The argument to put ad fraud prevention technology in place is quite simply undeniable. As Stephen made reference to, we deal with a lot of organisations who don't do anything about fraud until they talk to us. Or actually, quite often, they will do their own data to look at the numbers and go, blimey, there's something going wrong here. And we find that usual unprotected click fraud levels on Facebook and Instagram, which is effectively the same advertising network, are around about 38%. It depends, it's sector-based, there's a whole heap of things. This time of year, around Black Friday, it's worse. And that means that, on a spend of £50,000 a month, then there's about £19,000 worth of wastage, which is over the course of a year, £250,000. It's a very, very big deal. These are large sums of money. We'll come on to shortly as to why this happens and where the revenue flows through, as to why criminals do this. And this is quite interesting. This is Gartner. This is a very recent article. As you can see, Survey 2020, but it's published into last year. This is ad fraud is key, and obviously it's very, very important to reduce or mitigate against ad fraud and click fraud and impression fraud as best you can, because that means that you can have better campaigns and they can be more effective. You get more humans to your website, and therefore, there's no reason to believe that KPIs, ROAS will all be better. But see, Gartner make the point, which is something that we talk about too, is that you also have rubbish data in your stack. If you've got a whole heap of stuff going on that is actually bot activity, that's never going to convert. It's not going to buy from you, because it might download PDFs, it might look at in quotes, it might look at articles and whatever, but it's not real. But you're making decisions based upon that. And what Gartner here are saying is that actually people don't trust their data, and they want to. But 9 out of 10 marketeers, again, this is from Gartner, do not use click fraud protection. Actually, this is from a survey we carried out, apologies, before Brighton SEO. And that's a really big deal. So why do criminals engage in ad fraud? Well, a whole heap of things. So you've got the DMA bottom right, brands at risk, claim their reputation is damaged by being associated with or even accidentally funding the organised crime that is digital ad fraud. That's important, because ad fraud really is run by criminal organisations. By definition, it's a crime. But they tend to be organised ones. They tend to be big organisations who are making a lot of money out of this. And I'm going to go through a case study in the next couple of slides. But the point is, it's actually relatively straightforward. It used to be the case that to run complicated ad fraud schemes, you would have to work out a way to compromise lots of computers on the internet. So you'd have to be able to write, some kind of virus that would be distributed around compromised machines. We're all familiar with those kind of things. Those of us who've been around long enough. But actually, most people are better. Machines do get compromised. You do have that kind of activity still going on. But most of the time now, these big ad fraud networks, they just buy cloud servers. This is easy. They're cheap. They can just run them wherever they want to, and they just shut them down when they don't need them anymore when they're found out. And it's a low risk, high profit recurring revenue crime, as you can see from that graph on the top left. So let's talk about MethBot. That's just such a cracking photo. I'll leave it there for a second. Now, MethBot is one of the larger bot networks that's broken apart. And the people have been prosecuted for this and are in prison in the US as a result of this. It was run out of Russia. The nice thing about it is there's lots of data about how it worked and how much money they made. So the question is, what are all these robots doing? There they are, bottom right, saying, I wish we had money to buy some of this stuff. But the point here is that actually it is about money, and it's about how that money flows. So a lot of people, this is almost a two-stage sting, so do pay attention. Right, MethBot. So as mentioned, the objective here, lots of machines, primarily cloud services, some compromised machines, and what they were doing is they're using them to manipulate the ad networks. So this is broadly speaking how it works. And there are other mechanisms by which criminals work with, why they run click fraud. But this is MethBot's one. So what people expect to happen is that you pay for an advert, you pay for it, and you're either paying cost per thousand CPM for impressions on something like Facebook or Instagram, but you can pay clicks on Facebook, you don't normally, or you're paying for a click, as you might on Google search. So you're expecting that every penny you pay will get you what you're expecting. So obviously with impressions, all the impressions are genuine, and you get a number of clicks out of those that are genuine, pay for clicks, every one of them is genuine. But if we assume as a general number, just because there's three numbers there, that 30% of those website visits are some bots, you're still paying the same money. A marketeer is still paying the same money, the same budget, even though 1/3 of your traffic isn't genuine. So where's that money go? Well, the answer is that money there doesn't go to those who are perpetuating this fraud. It still goes through to the ad networks. The ad networks collecting this money, but they're not giving it to anyone. The criminal doesn't get any cash out of that. So that's point one, is your money isn't directly going to criminals in that way. So what's behind those bots is this botnet, like for example, MethBot. And what they're doing is they're not running one bot, they're running millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of bots. And the reason they're engaging with these adverts is because they're trying to appear like they're human. And the reason they're trying to appear like they're human is so they can use them as though they're humans. But what do humans do on the internet? Well, humans navigate around websites. They have social media accounts. They see adverts, or they see things in their feed. They click on things. They search. They do what humans do. And so these bots are just out there doing what humans do. Now, sometimes they're targeted at particular sectors because they want to look like they're really interested in a particular sector. And the reason they're doing that, in this case of MethBot, was what they were using their bots to do is they were driving them through to tens of thousands of fake websites that have been set up for this purpose. So it might be a website, for example, for premium cars, and it might be targeting people who have got an interest to buy a premium car within the next 3 months. Now that, with a big audience of active users, is very attractive to advertisers. And this is where their revenue comes through. What they were doing is they were running all these websites. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of them, and they were selling video, text, and image adverts on them through the programmatic advertising ecosystem, the one that Google and Facebook are under the cosh in the US for manipulating, allegedly, shall we say, manipulating. And obviously, premium brands are placing adverts on those fake websites. Now, someone will no doubt ask me later, well, is there not safeguards in place for this? And the answer is yes, there is. There's been many attempts to mechanize safeguards so that your adverts don't go where they're not supposed to go. They don't work very well, and they're manipulated and they're controlled. And you go, okay, fine, great. Well, so what does that mean? Well, this mechanism here, the MethBot run, and there are other botnets that have been broken apart, other botnets that are still active in this space. And at their peak, they were making $2 to $3 million a day through this activity, and they ran for about 18 months before they were shut down. So that gives you an idea of the commercial reason why a criminal organization might be involved with this. It is basically easy money for them. It's easy money. It's very, very low risk. It's unusual, frankly, that the people behind MethBot were actually caught and charged. Normally, it just doesn't happen. They just vanish and they come up again. So big deal. Now, the other things they might use bots that look like humans for is they might use them to boost promoted posts. They might use them to spend someone else's money on a search engine that has promoted posts, for example. They might use them to post articles. I mean, I'm not going to quote any political party names, but I mean, there certainly was a bit of a scandal, or there often is a scandal with political parties, about bots on Twitter. hundreds and hundreds and thousands of bots posting exactly the same message out in promotion of something that the current political party in charge of the UK wants to promote, for example, or the other way around. All these things happen, and they don't happen from humans, they happen from bots because it's cheap, it's easy. So it's all about making something look real that you can then use in this digital space where you don't actually know who they are. York Minster, beautiful place. Very expensive though. So I'm going to touch on what Beacon does, but I'm actually going to sort of then drop out into why we do it and a little bit more technical. And I'm going to try and breeze through this because I've already been 20 minutes and we want some questions in here. So what Beacon does is we detect bots, and we do that by a whole range of mechanisms we're going to talk about. And then we work with our clients to block them. And the thing we always say is that actually you can't block all the bots, sort of by laws of statistics. If you're getting 30% of bots through and you block 30% of those, then the ones that come in, 30% of those are going to be bots. So it's a law of diminishing returns, but you can definitely bring numbers down from 38, 40% fraudulent traffic down to below 10%. We have clients who've done that, and they're very happy. They get great results. So that's what it's all about. Reach more, waste less, and trust data. Really, really key. So I always show people this cartoon, and most people have never actually seen it before, which I find interesting. But this is a cartoon that was published. Actually, do you know what I was going to say when it's published? But in my notes, I don't seem to have. But it's a very old one. One of the objectives we had within Beacon was to significantly reduce online fraud from non-human actors by verifying whether specific digital actions carried out by a human being. And in the early days of the internet, hardly anyone knew who you were online. And a 2011 TED talk, 4chan founder Christopher Paul said the key was to think of identity as a diamond, not a mirror. So you can look at people from different angles and see something totally different, and we all do that. But actually, it's still the same now, because whilst we have so many source of truth identity systems in place, Google, Facebook, Amazon themselves are source of identity systems. There's many occasions when you're just browsing around the internet and nobody knows who you are, and you could be anyone. And this is that grey area that bots manipulate and take advantage of. So I mentioned that I'm a member of the Chief Data Officers Hub, which is a network of data practitioners from a wide section of businesses and academia who are looking to shape what it means to be a data leader in a modern organization. And in a recent online event, we're looking at the subject of barriers to organizational data literacy. And this is actually a really key point, because trusting data blindly is worse than having no data. It's really important that you have good data, but also that you have an understanding within your organization of how to utilize it, what it means, to think clearly and rationally, understand the logical connection between ideas, and to engage in reflexive and independent thinking, which is where we're talking about critical thinking, because critical thinking says, I'm going to take this bit of information I have and I'm going to think about it. And I'm going to apply a variety of different practices to it to say, do I trust it? Is it real? Which comes back to that whole trust thing. So we deal with the issues in Beacon of fake traffic directly costing our customers money in terms of fake clicks on paid ads, fake impressions. And we're actually, one of our sort of long-term strategic technical missions is exploring the commercial and technical viability of combining innovative technologies, artificial intelligence, which we already use, on-site journey validation, which is where we've kind of written the book, and smart ledgers as well, to create a digital humanity detection system. Something we're happy to talk about, but it's a sort of like, where we're planning to go with this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about fraud detection. So, because people like this kind of stuff. I hope they like this kind of stuff. If you don't, then please just feel free to zone out. So what we do with our clients is we measure what's happening on a website. We look at everything that's happening on a website within the context of visitors. So an individual visitor will have a number of pages they engage with. They have a number of actions on those pages. They have and they have indicators around those. They have sort of non-actionable items, such as how long they take to engage between action items, how long they take to scroll down a page, how their mouse moves and stuff like that. And some of you may have heard of the concept of the uncanny valley, which is often used in relation to the visual representation of artificially created, superficially human faces or robots. It was originally conceived by Professor Masahiro Mori, who was at the Tokyo Institute of Technology around 1970, when he published Bukumi no Tani, which is very poorly pronounced Japanese for uncanny valley, in which he describes the sense of unease, of a strangeness, of scariness that humans feel for robots and other almost look human but don't. And actually, there's a number of websites you can look online where you can sort of like see faces, artificially generated faces. Some of them are extraordinarily effective, and some of them have got that kind of like, that doesn't really look right. It feels a bit weird. It actually is equally applied, interestingly, to pseudo-human sounds, to audio. There's an excellent YouTube video by a chap called Scruffy about how audio enhances the horror of Five Nights at Freddy's, which if you haven't played it, as you're not a gamer, I guess it's probably not for you, but if you are a gamer and you haven't played it, I recommend strongly. And if you play it on VR, then you'll probably find yourself, like I was, utterly terrified and taking your VR headset off within 2 minutes. But check it out, because it's really interesting. So it talks about how slight differences attract our attention as humans. And actually, this pertinently applies to non-human to bot behavior on websites. So the graph bottom left demonstrates the tendencies of actual behavior between humans on the left and bots on the right. And you can see on the surface of it, they're very, very similar. But actually, in that, you can see a real pattern in terms of how bots behave differently as a general average versus humans. And this is from a huge set of data, primarily using random forest models, but we've got a few other things going on. And bots become increasingly sophisticated over time. So contemporary countermeasures have to become increasingly sophisticated. It's basically an arms race, let's be absolutely honest with you. And one thing I'd like to talk about specifically is mouse movement, which is quite interesting. And I'm just going to move to the next slide for this. And this is something that we've just been working on very recently. We work with academia, we work with a number of universities up here in the north. And this is a project we're carrying out at the University of Huddersfield, who outstanding university for their work on AI, and looking at the differences between mouse movement. So early bot networks didn't bother with mouse movement because bots don't have hands. So why would they need to move a mouse? They basically, engage with general items on a page with no movement in between them. And when I say mouse movements, it's touch points on a phone or a device. It's the same principle. It's measured in the same way. Although interestingly, on like a phone, you'll always get edge screen touch points, and that's a really interesting tell for, are you dealing with a human who's got a hand, who's someone like me, you're touching the blooming thing around the edge without meaning to, and that happens a lot, whereas bots don't show that yet. Second generation bots, if you allow to use that terminology, they faked mouse movement with a direct X1, Y1 to X2, Y2 straight line mouse movement. Now, bring up a graphical program, use your mouse to try and draw a dead straight line on your computer, and you'll utterly fail. And it's not your fault. You've got vagaries of your mouse movement, got vagaries of your desk. And so modern bot networks fake mouse movement in a much more sophisticated fashion. They add in jaggedness. They make it vague around the straight line. But actually, what you're looking at there, which probably means almost nothing to you, but the point is, at the top there, you've got human mouse movements, and at the bottom, you've got bot mouse movements, which is quite interesting. Because you can tell there's a difference going on. So that's the kind of sort of level of detail sophistication we're going to. Now, what does that mean? Besides, actually, we've got a bot, stop it engaging with ads, and we do that across our clients. If we've got a bot, we blot it across all of our clients, which is great. Well, actually, you can use it, and I'm coming towards the end of what I'm talking about now. You can use it for things like understanding market, for understanding bot spikes. So this was a client we were working with last year, and what we discovered was that across their campaigns, they were getting bot spikes towards the end of the month. And you can see there on the main graph that we're talking about that, but it wasn't affecting their CPM. So it wasn't available to them in their other data. And their CPC was kind of a bit all over the place. You can see that, like the red line, which is one particular campaign, and the dotted gray line, another one, both relatively big spends. Their CPCs and CPMs are saying the same, but they were getting a huge number of bot spikes, so they're getting less valuable traffic, and they were able to modify their campaigns to reflect that. And it was always consistently around this time. Don't know why. It was obviously something to do with the internal workings of whatever botnet were targeting them. And another one, which is pertinent now, this is the beginning of November last year, as you can see, sorry, end of November last year, as you can see. And what you can see is around 23rd, 25th, a very, very significant spike around CPC and the CPL on the orange line. And that's Black Friday, Cyber Monday time. And we see it actually consistently over the last 3 years, going back through the data, that CPCs go up from sort of end September onwards. And that's not a surprise, because obviously people are interested. But all of that activity makes it easier for bots to hide in plain sight. And so what we're able to see here is that actually the orange campaign for this client wasn't protected. The green campaign was protected. And by protecting against bot activity, we protected their CPC. It didn't go up as much. You can see there's quite a substantial spike, and nearly doubling of CPC. On the left-hand graph, 25th to 77th on the unprotected campaign maintains the level, and it's reflected, although to a great extent, it's just the axis making it look like it isn't. On the right-hand graph, which is the CPL, so actually the cost per lead was, rather than being below 10, was over 15 for those key periods of days. And the numbers we're talking about here, you're talking about tens of thousands coming through. And so it's a very, very big deal. So what's interesting is that protecting bots not only stops them engaging, but actually gives a greater degree of protection at these spike periods. Christmas, New Year is another one. And there's key moments, but Christmas, basically from September through to Christmas, bots are in heaven. And final slide, second final slide. A little bit of it's not a pitch, but just wanted to share this with you. This is a local company up here in Leeds, where I'm based. Make mattresses. I have one myself. They're very good. And the graph on the left shows that they were wasting a substantial amount of their budget when we started to engage with them in October last year. And by engaging with Beacon, they were able to reduce their wastage down from nearly 48% down to 20%, and actually they're below 20% now. They're sort of 18-ish%, which is a very big deal. We have other clients who've gone from, I think in particular one in the gaming sector, who's gone from 45% bot engagement down to below 10. So you can make a huge difference, is the point, by engaging these things. And that, I think, having spoken for about half an hour, which probably is far too long, thank you. Really appreciate your time, and my favorite place in the world, Scarborough, for you. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. What is that rather grand looking hotel in Scarborough? I'm not familiar.
That would be the Grand Hotel, Stephen.
There you go, Grand Hotel.
Honestly and truthfully, it looks amazing from outside. The inside,
shabby inside, is it?
It's just appalling, utterly terrible. I'm sorry, shabby chic does not come close. It's terrible. Shall I stop sharing? Well, that'd probably be easy one.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and I'm going to put, if I may, I'm going to add your colleague Suzanne to the spotlight. Okay, so look, lots of food for thought there. I think it's a subject matter that I was kind of vaguely aware of, and I don't know how aware everyone was on this call. I think it's quite alarming, actually, to the extent of the problem. And one of the things that kind of occurs to me, I guess the first question is, this is not, okay, whilst we can go back to Facebook and we should ask Facebook what they're doing about it, surely governments are aware of this, and surely governments should be actually saying this is a fraud. We need to get to the bottom of this. If it was blue-collar fraud in another industry, if it was happening in the insurance industry or the financial services industry, actually maybe not financial services, but they'd be all over it, and they'd be actually trying to do something about it. Why do you think that's not happening?
That's a really interesting observation. I don't think people tend to ask why government don't do anything about it. I mean, there are those who might think the government can't find its arse with its hands, but it isn't regarded as something that government needs to worry about. It's an industry problem to resolve. I mean, I wasn't involved with the DMA when we had huge problems with email spam, which, you're sort of talking like, 90s and early thousands, and that was solved by the industry. And I think the government really kind of regards this as something that they just, if occasionally you get criminal investigations into the very big frauds, but a lot of these frauds are just, tiny. Tiny, relatively tiny. They're tens or hundreds of thousands, not millions and millions a day. So it's almost like, A, it's not big enough for them to do something about generally, but also B, my suspicion is they just lean on the big industry sector players. The trouble is that it really looks like, allegedly, those big industry sector players are at best enabling it, or worse, colluding.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously we're well aware of all the various different government activities and trying to call to account the big platforms, whether it's to do with D&I, racism, or it's to do with some of the issues that social media evils are all too well aware of, and they're pushing quite hard on that agenda. But it seems to me this is another agenda that should be included in their conversations with the likes of Facebook.
Well, I mean, Stephen, you've got to remember that this is just new. I mean, governments move at relatively glacial speed anyway, and this problem didn't exist 30 years ago, and it wasn't really that big a deal 20 years ago. This is so fundamentally new, but it's so fundamentally new in every way possible. It's not like it's a sector that's existed for 100 years and suddenly this thing's come in, therefore it needs to be dealt with. This sector didn't exist, and and there's so many things to deal with, across the whole digital services sector. This is just one thing. So it's difficult.
Okay, it's not new, but I mean, you alluded to the fact, and I imagine reading between the lines, you're talking about Brexit and talking about Mr. Dominic Cummings and his various shenanigans over the use of digital media.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Was that right? That was what you were referring to?
In what context, sorry, Stephen?
In the context of creating up fake accounts and actually driving content.
It was more, I think. I suppose what I was referring to, are you talking about the Twitter storms around, where you get 10,000 accounts that post the same story saying, isn't it great that XYZ has happened, or isn't it terrible that XYZ has happened? It's merely making the point that until very recently, and actually in some sectors still, bots are regarded as something that's good, and bots by their very nature are not bad. So the web scraping stuff that Google uses to index, Google and others use to index the web, is just bots. They're just bits of software doing their things. But there's almost this perception, particularly in marketing and communications, that promoting up your account, getting more impressions, more likes, more followers, even if they're not real, is a good thing. But actually, when you think about it, those bots only work because they look human. They can only look human if they're engaging in this kind of activity. And that's the problem, is there's a perception that, oh, well, it doesn't matter too much if I, pay $5 on Fiverr to get 10,000 people liking my post. Well, actually, it really does.
Yeah, it does certainly be paying for it. And, as it undermines trust in digital marketing, it undermines trust in agencies. And brand owners, many of whom feel rightfully had by the whole situation. So to what extent are Facebook actually beginning to do something about this to try and prevent click fraud? I mean, why aren't they working with organisations and creating software like yours to make this thing no longer a problem?
I mean, Facebook is obviously rather more interested in creating some kind of metaverse at the moment and trying to get away from all the other problems it's got. I suppose fundamentally, when you look at it, and you can be generous about this, and occasionally I am, you can say that this is a very big problem for them to solve, because it's difficult for them to kind of look at every account on the system and go, is it definitely human? And I know there's been some attempts to introduce two-factor authentication in terms of account registration, but also sign-in. But I mean, frankly, that's laughably easy to get past if you felt so inclined. And so you can be generous and say it's difficult for them. They don't have full visibility of what's going on the website, like, for example, we do. So for our clients, we know everything that goes on the website, GDPR, privacy, appropriate sense. We don't know who these people are. We don't actually care. We're just only interested in finding bots. But actually, when you look at it commercially, if Facebook stop this point, Facebook could stop this problem tomorrow, their market capitalization would drop by 50%. So why are they going to do that?
Well, yeah, but so the trust measures might increase by 50%, and I guess it depends on how short-term versus long-term they are. But okay, that's a good point. I mean, in terms of one of the questions that come from Andy, what sort of scale of spend as a client do you need to have to make it worthwhile engaging with this particular software package?
Suzanne, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sure. We recommend sort of an ad spend starting from around 10,000, and that can be across both channels, Google and Facebook.
Okay, so that could be either a client spending 10,000, or in the case of an agency buying on behalf of clients or clients, I imagine. So if you had sort of multiple clients and you were buying, say, 50, 20,000, the license would cover off multiple clients, or is it by client?
It's across multiple clients, is that correct?
Yeah, so the way the licensing structure works is it's based upon ad spend. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So we have agencies who have many clients with us, and then it's aggregated across those.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, that 10,000 is monthly.
Yeah. So relative to spend. I mean, now increasingly, what is digital spend now as a total advertising spend? I think something ridiculous, like 70%.
Well, I mean, Google and Facebook between them 2 years ago were 300 million digital ad spend, of which the bulk was Google, and obviously it was up last year, and the actual numbers for last year. But yeah, it's huge.
I need to get a handle on the latest spend data, because obviously television still takes a decent slug, outdoor and radio, obviously smaller amounts, and increasingly obviously print is in decline. It'd just be interesting to see how big digital is
We've just taken on a client, which is a retail client, high street retail client, and they're spending over $1 million a month on Facebook, and that's far from exceptional.
But from an agency's point of view, I mean, what we do see typically is a lot of digital agencies, may actually only contract with a client for a relatively short period of time. Unlike the old advertising agency model, where you basically appoint an agency and they would have a retainer for a 12-month or even longer period. Digital agencies tend to work on either a monthly or quarterly rolling contract. And therefore, it has to be in their interest, one would assume, actually to employ this sort of software, because it actually will create a differentiator, will demonstrate that the clients that they're serving are in true value, because a third of the value of a spend is disappearing straight away. In terms of efficiency and ROI, you're 30% down before you've even had a chance to prove that actually you couldn't actually give them a return on their investment.
I mean, I don't know if there's a question there, but I mean, talking about that just very quickly, by the way.
It's a statement, I suppose, really. It's
no.
Statement of the bleeding obvious, but yeah, it does seem to me that it's something that's worth looking at.
Just very quickly, quarter one 2021 ad spend, 45 billion beyond Google, 25 billion on Facebook. So this is where we are now.
That's global spend, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it possible for advertisers or agencies to be able to see whether or not there is click fraud on their ads? Can they tell? I mean, is there kind of a watermark or something like that, or something that will actually tell them?
You need to, I mean, yeah. Let me put it this way. Yes, there is, but you need the kind of tech that we've got in order to be able to see that watermark, because the watermark is exactly what I was talking about in terms of analyzing data, analyzing the visitor journeys, and then doing the heavy lifting of working out if something's a bot or not. I think it is reasonably safe. In fact, I will go out on a limb and say it's utterly safe to assume that you've got click fraud and impression fraud in your campaigns. Full stop. It's just the level, the extent you've got it.
And is the problem more prevalent on a particular channel? Is Facebook the worst because they're taking a larger proportion of the spend? Or is Insta like what's happening on TikTok?
It honestly does. It honestly does depend. So we're Google search. So search is sort of relatively low. Google do have a genuine interest in making sure that their traffic is better. So it's often sort of 15, 18, 20%. Facebook, as I said, around 35 to 40% is, and that's similar on Instagram. We've just started doing some work on LinkedIn, and those numbers are relatively low, sort of 10 to 15%. Twitter, much as I love the platform, we've seen numbers up of 90% on that, which is just dreadful. TikTok, similar kind of numbers around the Facebook area.
That makes sense.
But also it's sectors. There is a huge amount of sector specificity to it. So retail, e-commerce gets targeted rather more highly than B2B generally, but I mean B2B still gets it. The gaming sector gets a lot, as you would expect. Yeah.
The bit of the kind of cash flow, if you like, I couldn't figure out is how do the fraudsters actually get their money? So they've created these bots, which are creating false impressions. Facebook are taking the money. How do they get their money?
I mean, that kind of was what I went through in the presentation there, Stephen. So the example of MethBot was that they were then setting up fake websites where they were adverts were being placed in them themselves, and that's how they were being paid out from their revenue share there.
So that's where they got the okay.
Yeah. So I mean, but like I say, it's not. It's $2 to $3 million a month dollars. So that's a huge deal. I mean, there's a lot of effort into it. There were hundreds, if not tens, if not hundreds of thousands.
Listen, it's an amazing use of the technology in a criminal way. Is there any sense of who these people are behind this? I mean, are they individuals? Are they organized?
So MethBot, which is, I think there's a study on it on our website. Suzanne, is that true? Certainly there's links to it. I mean, it was broken apart by a group of white hat hackers in the US. It was a Russian criminal organization, and I think 9 people, like the ringleaders, have been arrested. They had close ties into Russian government. It's just criminal organizations. Define them any way you want.
I suppose it would make a rather boring James Bond film, wouldn't it? Really, I mean, it's quite an interesting plot, but these particular characters sitting in their dark environments in all parts of Siberia, it's not particularly exciting, is it? But they are, as you say, making a huge amount of money.
My suspicion is they more have tech caves like Q does in Bonds. That's what I kind of like to think. Stroking their white cats and all that stuff.
And when we talk about the sectors, I'm imagining the sectors that are most affected are the ones that are spending the most.
Yeah, I mean, so the reason that Suzanne mentioned that 10,000 plus a month is a good spend is because there's a larger impact. I mean, an actual financial impact. But in terms of affected, it's not necessarily a product to spend. I mean, obviously, there's a factor in it because obviously, the more you're spending, the more you're wasting. There's an actual number.
Okay, so I've got some questions coming in, if I may, which I'd like to field from the team. Let's have a look. Jill, you got a question? Let me take you off mute.
Hi, yeah, this is really fascinating stuff. I just mind-blowing. But typically when you're helping a client and they can see that they've reduced their, let's call it wastage or fraud by 10 or 20%, do they then think, well, great, well, I'll stop spending that 10 or 15% and spend it somewhere else? Or do they just think, no, I'm going to keep the same spend, but I can measure the effectiveness. I can measure the increased effectiveness because 20% of my ad budget is going to the right people.
Suzanne, do you want to pick
Oh,
up?
sure. Yeah, we don't tend to see that clients reduce their ad spend once they've reduced their waste to click fraud. They tend to maintain the same level of ad spend or increase it. See, some will just enjoy seeing better performing campaign, which will naturally result in higher conversions, because if they've got more real people clicking and less bots, it will naturally result in higher converting campaign. Some use it as a means to creating a really solid campaign that can then be scaled up with confidence, knowing that you're scaling up the campaign, increasing your spend and targeting more people and not more bots.
Yeah.
So yeah, the answer is that we don't see people reducing, but we see people definitely maintaining the level of spend or increasing.
Oh, that's interesting, because when you have that increased level of confidence, you would think, well, if that's working for me, I'll put more of my budget into that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
If I may add to that, which I think is quite interesting, and I always forget to mention this. I mean, we only use the mechanisms that the networks allow us to use. We don't do anything that's like bypassing their own mechanisms. But actually, we have experienced exactly that, which is that people spend the same or quite often more. And it's more effective for them. So they're more sort of in tune with spending more on that particular platform. And this is one of the things that's it's important to remember is that the ad ecosystem works well enough, but actually by reducing fraud, it works better. So you would have thought, back to your question, Stephen, about why ad networks don't do this themselves, that they would be really interested in something like this because it makes their platform more effective, means people spend more money. And if they want to buy us, then we're open.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you would hope, isn't it? I mean, a couple of other questions coming in. Well, I mean, I guess equally the converse of what Jill's just said is true, which is being aware of it and promoting the requirement. The commercial television stations and Sky and elsewhere, you'd think that actually they would be basically jumping all over this and say, yeah, just what we've always told you, you can't trust digital. You should be spending more money on television, digital, terrestrial. Mark Cook.
Stephen, really apologies because I've forgotten about this. This has been happening for years. And for Facebook or Google or anybody to come out and go, well, actually, gosh, mea culpa, this has been going on for 10 years. I mean, the lawsuits that they will be facing for the fact that it's been allowed to happen for 10 years on their platform would be absolutely huge, which is maybe another reason why they're reluctant, just a hypothesis.
Yeah, well, possibly, but it's all going to go hand to wrist because it all generally does. Mark Hook, you've got a question here, sir. How does your software think? Well, I'll pass it over to you since you're there, Mark, please.
Yeah, just in terms of kind of obviously for some agencies, there's a lot of focus on overall brand safety. And there are companies like Integral Ad Science and Double Verify, and sort of schemes out there like the Tag Brand Safety Certificate. Where does kind of Beacon fit into that?
Yeah, so I mean, IAS and I think Motor, another one of those players, and Double Verify about brand safety. They're primarily working in the whole ad ecosystem, so the programmatic ad space, where adverts are for those who are not familiar, that's where there's a whole sort of automated bidding process set around rules whereby ads, this is the kind of ad you like to see on news sites, where a video pops up or there's an image or whatever, that's automatically placed based on some kind of bidding process. And there's a lot of brand safety attempts to stop your ads appearing on websites they shouldn't do. That's where organizations like that play, and they do obviously try and stop fraudulent sites from sort of like accepting ads. I think the work that the suit in the US is really making the point that Amazon and Facebook are basically bypassing themselves. But we're not in programmatic ad at all. We're about paid search, paid social, and really sort of expanding in LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, all those kind of things. So alongside in that sector space, but not really, the same as them.
It's a summary, I guess, Mark, it's a different thing, but they're both important issues at the moment. So advertisers need to be aware of, because ad safety is a critical issue, particularly if you're in certain categories. To build on that, question from Jake Russell: is there any information on the extent of the problem within the Amazon ad ecosystem?
Okay, so I'm going to be. So this is something we've been asked to look at. And interestingly, in the UK, hardly anyone has spoken to us about the Amazon ad ecosystem, but we've got a few things going on in the US, a few clients in the US, and it's expanding there. And they over in the US, it's a really big deal, Amazon. Now, anecdotally, there's a lot of problem with fraud on the Amazon ad ecosystem, but it's 80% are very closed shops. So the adverts you place on Amazon are to Amazon products, and Amazon don't let you insert anything into that process. So there's really no mechanism to be able to go, this thing here that went here isn't real. But about 20% of what they do is adverts that drive off platforms. So they drive to some kind of website. Now, we've done a little bit of research into that, and I confess it's very early days, but the indication is that it's the same kind of fraudulent levels that are happening on Facebook, fake kind of fake issues that happen on Facebook. The trouble with Amazon, the good thing and the bad thing with Amazon, is that they're utterly focused on their customers, almost to the detriment of their suppliers. And I mean, do the research yourself. It's quite alarming that if you just have a look into people talking about how their shops have been shut down on Amazon because you've done something they don't like. It's a very dangerous space to kind of insert additional stuff to go, I want to validate the veracity of this traffic, because Amazon may just go, I don't like the look of what you're doing, and shut you down. And it doesn't matter if you've got a shop that's taking millions, they'll shut you down. And so it's really dangerous. So it looks like there is a problem, but actually it's going to be quite a hard one to solve. It's not that we're not going to try and solve it, but if that was the question, Jake, but it's challenging.
So Jeff Bezos, he sends the lads around effectively, but
they kind of do, and the thing is, like all these things. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever had their Facebook account sort of blocked. A friend of mine did, and it was it was really hard work to get it reactivated. I mean, not done anything. It's just one of those things. But it's difficult. If they shut you down, you're in trouble.
And then Simon, I would ask a very, I guess, straightforward question: has anyone thought about contacting the trading standards about the Amazon experience?
Well, so specifically about my USB, no, because frankly, it cost me 30 odd quid, and I thought, do you know what, this is a far better thing to keep in my possession and be able to use at talks and presentations than actually worry about that. But I probably should have done. But I mean, for that one that we shut down, hundreds of others would jump out, and there are loads of them on there. Also, trading standards isn't exactly set up to handle these things, really, is it?
It's not. Okay. Well, look. Whilst I think we'd all like to kind of short on Google and Facebook and Amazon and the like and take our money elsewhere, the reality is this is not unique to the digital world. For many years, newspapers lied about their circulation and their readership. Outdoor poster sites didn't post. Spot times didn't go out on TV or radio. So, we just have to be realistic enough to realize that actually that marketing is not a perfect science, but you do need to actually be keep your eyes open and be smart about actually your advertising spend, but also make sure you've got the right security in place and you've got the good guys on your side. Thank you very much to Stuart and to Suzanne for today's talk. Like I say, I think it's a really big subject, and one that I think is going to grow and grow. I think it's going to be alongside some of the other big subjects we're facing at the moment. Whether it's sustainability, whether it's actually looking at the huge issues that are coming out of COP26. I'm not saying it's as important as that, but from advertising and marketing and communications point of view, it's certainly big news. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just basically, whilst I've got you on the call today, just flagging a couple of other sessions we've got coming up over the next couple of weeks. The next 11 o'clock call, Pimento midweek call, we haven't got one next week, but the week after, on the 24th of November, it's our Business Development Club. We'll be back under the stewardship of Paddy Woods, our Head of Business Development. This particular session is open to any person who's responsible for business development in their agency. It'll be covering on this side, actually, we'll be looking at content, content strategy, the types of content you need to produce, how to deploy your content to get engagement from your principal audiences, which will, I guess, be prospective clients. It'll be a panel with Adam Benzacroft from Inflow AI and James Skeleton from Force 24, who's a marketing automation specialist. So that'll be our next session. We're hoping to have a 5 p.m. club on the 25th, waiting for that to be confirmed. So stick that in your diary or pencil it in your diary for the time being. That will be the last of the year of our network 5 p.m. clubs. We'll try and do something also in December, which would be a bit of a roundup, and really looking forward to 2022, what are the big issues which you as agency owners, clients, etc., big starting to consider. Okay, well, thanks once again. Really good presentation, good debate. Thank you for everyone's engagement, and I hope to see you all very soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.